Welcome everyone to the second installment of the Fintech Talk series, hosted by Fintech Sandbox. I'm Quincy Kennedy, VP Digital Fintech for Citizens. And I'm excited to introduce the What Can Fintechs Do to Help Small Businesses Recover and Move Forward section. This topic is especially relevant to me because of the recent work Citizens has been doing and the ongoing efforts to support small businesses in the communities they serve. First, our Small Business Recovery Program supported 134 businesses that were affected by the pandemic, with $2 million in grants. In addition, like many other banks, we're participating in the Paycheck Protection Program. During the first round, Citizens loaned nearly $5 billion to small and mid-sized businesses, saving roughly 500,000 jobs. And we're continuing to support small businesses as they apply for their second PPP loan. When thinking about the theme of this week's event, the role of ensuring inclusive growth, the topic of small business recovery is an essential part of that conversation because small businesses are the heartbeat of our communities around the world. Small businesses are operated by our friends and neighbors, citizens that we live with every day, who are actually some of the ones who have been most impacted by the pandemic. Ensuring global inclusive growth for small businesses doesn't just support the business themselves, it causes a positive ripple effect in the lives of everyone in our communities. In addition to this session, we have a lot of other great events and exciting speakers coming up throughout the rest of the week. Please join Fintech Sandbox for 2 sessions tomorrow. Financial Services Shifting Center on ESG at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, and at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, Can You Actually Do Well by Doing Good? A look at incentivizing VCs to fund financial inclusion companies. The registration links for those events are in the chat now. You won't want to miss these events. Now, without further ado, I'm excited to welcome Sarah Heck from Stripe to get us started on the What Can Fintechs Do to Help Small Businesses Recover and Move Forward session. Hope you enjoy the rest of the conversation.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this very exciting conversation that we're going to have today. Again, my name is Sarah Heck. I am the head of entrepreneurship at Stripe, and I'm thrilled to be here to talk about small businesses and fintech and what's happening in the world around us. At Stripe, we small businesses and ambitious businesses are the lifeblood of what we do, expanding the GDP of the internet, making sure that people have the right digital infrastructure to run their businesses. But I'm joined by 3 people who are equally integral in making things possible for small businesses to grow. Ashley Eikanen, who is somebody who has been in this space for an incredibly long time. She is well, I should let everybody give their own intro, which I will do because I won't do it justice, but she's the Senior Vice President at Eastern Bank and the Chief Digital Strategist and Head of Eastern Labs, and so has really been driving innovation in this space for a long time. Nikhil Lakhanpal, who is the co-founder of Narmi, a fintech based out of New York City that's building enterprise solutions for digital banking, and Karen Moynihan, who is a 2-time founder and the CEO of Boss Insights that's using data to help banks and credit unions provide larger access to capital through financial data for small businesses. So I know that this is going to be an excellent conversation. We really want it to be a conversation, and we'll try and move through questions quickly. They all know that they're to be candid and fun, but also encourage folks tuning in from what I assume is home or some hopefully bench out at a park if springtime has hit you yet. Think about the questions you have for these incredible panelists and put them in the chat, and we will try and get to as many of those as possible. So what I'd like to do is just have each of you sort of go down the line. You can give sort of your elevator pitch of who you are and what your company does that is probably better than I just did. But in addition to that, I'd love for you to just tell me about a story of one of your users or clients over the past year that sort of really touched you and helped you understand sort of what small businesses need in this incredibly important moment of economic recovery. So maybe I'll start with Ashley since you're first on my screen.
Sure. Thanks for having me today. I'm super excited about this conversation and to be with all of these wonderful panelists. It's nice to see everyone. So I work for Eastern Bank. I run Eastern Labs, and I'm the chief digital strategist there. So Eastern Bank is a regional bank here in New England, serving consumers, small businesses, commercial business, and again, super excited to be here, and we're very passionate about innovation. I think in terms of just a user story that I'd like to share, we talk to our customers all the time, and I think what really struck me over the past really 12 months was seeing when you think about small businesses, right, and the owners of those businesses, there's the marketing department, there's the sales department, their customer service, there's the tech department. They do all these wonderful things. They're almost like a one-person band. And I think when something, like the pandemic hit, right, that sort of one-person band as being an owner is even more exacerbated, right? Their time is stretched even further. So just seeing how just multifaceted and multi-talented small business owners are, and just what they do on a day-to-day basis to keep their businesses running for their employees, for their customers, it was really, you knew that they did a lot. But I think over the last year, you were just like, oh my gosh, these people they're like superhuman, right, with all that they do. So I think that's been something that we've really taken to heart in terms of, looking forward, like what else we can do for them.
Great. Thanks so much. Nikhil, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Great to be here. Like Sarah said, my name is Nikhil Akinpal. I'm co-founder of Narmi. We help banks and credit unions with digital account opening, consumer digital banking, and business digital banking. So really our thesis is, if you think where banks or financial institutions are with respect to being totally digital, our thesis is they're really only 5 to 10% of the way there. So they're going to go on this journey in the next 10 years, delivering a lot more forward-thinking technology, more modular technology, more open technology. And that's what we've built and love to partner with banks and credit unions on. With respect to your question, we have this really amazing customer in the Boston area called Radius Bank. They're a $2 billion community bank, digital only. They pretty much had this industry-defining acquisition late last year, or early last year was approved this year, that Lending Club acquired them. And we've partnered with them for 3 years on a variety of products and platforms. But 2020, we did a business digital banking platform. So they have a really amazing SMB portfolio. And they just wanted to have a much better user experience. And the beautiful part of it, you asked what these SMBs are craving. We heard automation. We heard a consumer-like experience, but with business functionality. SMBs are craving ease. They want to be treated like a consumer, but also given the respect of a business. And so we partnered with them to launch a brand new state-of-the-art mobile online banking platform for SMBs. That's growing I can't disclose, but very well every month. And what's interesting is an SMB can have the same amount of automation as a consumer, but 5x the deposit balance. So not only you're helping the SMB, but from a bank standpoint, it's actually fairly attractive. So happy to talk about that more, but wanted to answer your question for now.
And Karen.
Hey, everybody. First off, it's so great to be here with the three of you. I mean, Sarah, what Stripe has done over the past few years has been absolutely incredible. And Eastern has done so much in making their customers bank with them for good, which is just so great. It's so dual focused and customer centric. And learning about Narmi as we prepared for this, it's just incredible what you've achieved. And Radius Bank is probably the bank that made waves. I remember last year in March, the last conference I was at in person, people said they were afraid of fintechs taking over banks or getting, and I said, well, that's only happened once. And Radius is that story, right? So where it was by design and it's done so much for the ecosystem. Boss Insights is a data aggregation company, which is usually the most boring part, but has become very quickly over the last couple of years, very interesting, because with accessing for the lenders we're working with, access to their customers' financial data in minutes, we can make it possible for them to accelerate their lending from months to minutes. We've shown a 5 times increase in speed when it comes to deciding on SMB and commercial loans, as well as monitoring those loans. And it's just by stopping to ask for financial statements by PDF and asking for them by getting them to put in their username and password to their accounting platforms or their commerce platforms. The accounting gives the financial statements, and the commerce gives real-time verified revenue information. So everybody wins. The business gives consent and can see transparently what's going on with the loan request. And the business lender has a real-time picture of what's happening and can offer products. So it just really increases the size of the pie for everybody. The story we're most excited about, I loved your first question, Sarah. It's with CC Bank, and it was during PPP. At the beginning, before there was any PPP lending, before there was $800 billion put out into the market, nobody really knew what was going to happen. And Boston Sites offered technology for free for any lender that would approve a new business. And we did that because approving a new business, as we all know, is a lot harder than an existing business. There's a lot of KYC, know your client, things that you have to go through. And CC Bank, right from the start, a community bank, it really put it all out there, was working all hours of the day, not just to give PPP loans to their existing customers, but to their new customers. And one quote that they got from their customer was, "You saved our business. I would recommend your bank to everyone and already have." And that's the one that makes us feel good. What I later heard from the chief lending officer was that in 1 to 2 months of operating PPP loans, they secured 2 to 3 years worth of leads. So it was true that when they helped their customer, they ended up helping themselves.
That's great. I love these stories because I think, as I said before, it's really about the small businesses and the entrepreneurs that are in the trenches every day, really like the three of you. And I think we're all in it together. And so when it's not just sort of a sea of people that have no name. These are people that are providing opportunities for their families and their communities and jobs. And a lot of this stuff is so essential to running our economy, especially given COVID. So thanks for sharing stories. And I hope you will share more because I know you each interact with lots of small businesses that are super interesting. But just to sort of dive in a little bit more, I'd love for you, and whoever wants to answer this, go for it, or you all can. Let's talk about I always call it the bureaucracy of business. All these things that we all know are required to run a business, but are probably not the thing that the owner or the entrepreneur is sort of gets them out of bed every day about their business. It's not where, we want them to focus on their craft and their ambition and the thing that excites them to build what they're building. So how does FinTech help us sort of strip away a lot of the stuff that nobody really wants to do, but is so essential to making sure that businesses do have a bank account, do get loans, do have the ability to run the mechanics of their business? Anybody can jump in. Don't be afraid.
Okay, I'll go, but please, Nikhil, Ashley, if you just cut me off if there's better answers. I always hear that capital is a top 3 priority, right? But the process of getting capital is quite frankly a dog's breakfast. And I've seen it now as somebody selling into lenders, but also someone who is a former commercial lender myself and as a business owner who's secured a loan. It is always a very tedious process to get to that yes, because it's really risky. There's a lot of downside and there's a limited amount of upside. And I think with the user interface that Nikhil was highlighting, that's really what fintechs are bringing to the table. You can do it the way you've always done it. There's nothing wrong with it. But without changing anything about the decisioning, you can make it possible for small and medium businesses to get access to capital so much easier because you've made it possible for them to just consent to giving the information, not to have to do the sharing of the information themselves. And that combined with the user interface that is about buttons, not attachments, not faxes, not paper forms they have to sign over and over again, we've really made it possible for them to get back to business. That's the thing that fintechs and banks really partner on, if I can be so bold as to speak for both parties.
And I know I said anybody could jump in, but it's sort of going off of that, Karen, Ashley, I feel like this is the space that you have been in for a really long time, like the interface between the customer and the business and the bank. And that technology interaction. So can you tell us a little bit about how you guys think about it at Eastern Bank and Eastern Labs? And then Nikhil, I'll get to you, I promise.
For sure. I think Karen brings up an important point, right? It's partnership is really important between financial service companies, fintechs. We need to look at, the capabilities we each bring to the table, and then how do we make our customers' lives easier, right? Whether it's a consumer or a business owner, right? You have to think about what are they doing every day? What are their pain points? And how do you try to alleviate those pain points? Sarah, I think you said it's like, it's not why they get up in the, sending invoices out isn't why they get up in the morning, right? It's about the passion that they have for their craft. So how do you get them focused on what they're passionate about, and how do you make their lives easier by enabling things that they do every day with technology? So in Eastern Labs, we do a lot of experimentation. We like to partner with Fintechs. We like to support, the Fintech Sandbox and Mass Challenge Fintech and accelerators and things like that. One of the things that we sort of have done over the last 2 years is we've done a lot of research with our customers and figuring out what the pain points are. And what we did is we said, okay, we got a lot of research, and we said, okay, we talked to our customers. And then we had this idea about, well, how do we make that small business owner, how do we get them more insights about their business? Like, how do we give them something in the palm of their hand that they can use every day? So we did some research, and we had this idea that we wanted to test, and we partnered with a company called Monit, which is Boston-based. And we went from this idea of sort of projecting cash flow and improving business decision-making right from a mobile device. Right. And so we went from sort of an idea to an actual commercialized product in 18 months, and have been testing it with our customers and releasing it to our customers and getting feedback. But it's all about sort of giving them more access to their data and giving them insights and alerts and kind of combing through all that minutia. Like, why can't we use technology to make it easier? And I think Nikhil brought this up around automation. How can you make things more automated for them so there aren't these sort of manual tasks that they're probably doing nights and weekends, to be frank, right? When they're doing, they're doing their books, right? They're catching up on stuff. How do you make all those tasks easier, leveraging technology? So that's just one of the areas that we've been working on, which is kind of cool.
Great. Super. Nikhil, you are also at the cross section of this. So how do you think about sort of easing this bureaucracy of business?
Yeah, and just, I come at it from a little bit of a unique angle where, most of my interaction is with the actual financial institution. So we're almost getting that business feedback from them directly. But obviously a big part of our UI, UX and product research goes to the business directly, of course. But I can tell you, business owners are not waking up saying, how do I get my accountant access to my bank account without me spending an hour on the phone with my bank? How do I make sure, do I have to pay my people 3 days early because I may not be able to log into online banking, or it may not process properly, or it takes 4 days to get there and I want them to get paid on time? These are not things, or I'll even give you an example. My bank's mobile app doesn't have Face ID on it, and I don't know my password, and they're down for 6 hours on Sunday morning. And I give you these as literally real examples in the past 3 days that we've encountered with these legacy platforms. So where fintech can come in, and I think fintech is defined as a newer entrant to not a legacy provider of financial technology. So it can really take all that pain away, and it can truly give the business an experience they're proud of, an experience they want to actually engage with. Radius, on their prior business banking platform, 90+% of people called in to add a new user to their business banking platform, and their old provider actually had that functionality. So it doesn't even make sense. So I think fintech really just has the ability to completely remove the user experience pain points. And by the way, all these challenger banks and neobanks have really done a great job disrupting the consumer space. Very few have one tried, and then even less have been successful on the business banking space. So I really do believe this is the regional and community financial institution it's like it's theirs to lose. And the mega banks don't do it well, right? Because the mega banks are focused on very large corporations. So there's one place where I think fintech can really move the needle. It's just delivering a far better experience for business customers.
And sort of following on to that, you talked about some of the pain points that you've felt in the past, couple of days with some customers. Do you put them into buckets that you're seeing? And as you talk about sort of community banks and regional banks, either sort of falling behind or being the vanguards of this, how do you think that they should think about building, given that different regions and different industries utilize these banks and probably don't want a one-size-fits-all platform?
Yeah. There are a few strategies that I've seen deployed that I actually, one, agree with, and two, have been successful. One is like actually figuring out what the definition of a business is, because a barbershop is not the same as a company that's doing payroll for 100 people every month. And they both might be your bank's customers. And I think that's because when you try to treat them the same, then I've seen some banks actually take those barbershops or those SMBs and actually put them on a consumer-oriented platform. And then it's not a good situation for a lot of people. So one strategy is almost having a separate SMB vertical and then a separate heavy commercial vertical. And, if you're a $100 million community bank, it becomes a little tough, but pretty quickly as you scale as a bank, or credit union, that distinction can be pretty easily made. Now, what are the cons to that? Well, you might have to run 2 banking platforms, and you might say, well, I don't want to do that on the back end. But at the end of the day, if you can do so much better on SMB because you've bifurcated those 2 definitions of business, the revenue you're going to generate on that new SMB portfolio, because you're actually tailoring a product towards them, will for sure pay for whatever extra staff you need on the back end or cost associated with that platform. So, I can go on and on, but by far, I'm really pushing banks to think of that, because also those heavy commercial businesses can be very, very lucrative to a community or regional bank. So I don't want to abandon them, but they almost need a full-time person, which is fine because they make a ton of money for the bank. But the SMB can be fully automated. So when I talk about segmentation or think about it, that would be the one thing that kind of sticks out, Sarah.
No, that makes tons of sense. And Ashley, in your experience, sort of seeing new players come on the scene, working with some more institutionalized players and sort of watching them meet in the middle, have you noticed things that work well in terms of adapting and innovating, and things that aren't perhaps working as well?
Yeah, as I said, I think there's huge opportunity for partnership in this area. I think, again, programs like the Boston Fintech Sandbox, right, where you have new startups testing out their products, and then financial services companies, partnering with them and really learning about the new technologies. And then you have, accelerated programs like Mass Challenge Fintech, where you see that great collaboration between fintechs and between established players, and just working on some really, really cool pilots and trying to take the technology forward and trying to get access to clients. It's just some really great success stories. To me, I think it's all about collaboration and what are you setting out to achieve, and just making sure that, you're bringing the right stakeholders to the table. So if you're a larger institution, right, you probably have, a big legal department, compliance department, you have information security, banks have a lot of regulations, you need to bring all of your stakeholders to the table and make sure that they understand what you're trying to do on day 0, right? So you have a successful pilot, whatever it is that you're trying to do. So what's worked in Eastern Labs and at Eastern is just being very, very transparent about what we're doing or what we're trying to do, not doing things in a vacuum, right? Bringing in the business lines. So we're not just a lab sort of tinkering on our own. It's okay, what are the real pain points out there for our customers? Which customer segment are we going to work in? Bringing those business lines, getting buy-in from them, bringing the other stakeholders from the corporate functions together, and the fintech in doing design sessions, right? Bringing them into the research, really, really thinking about it as one team and not a siloed event. I think that's where you can really get tripped up if not all your stakeholders aligned. So that's just sort of how we work. And that's where I've seen a lot of, partnerships go really, really well when you get that collaboration right from the beginning.
No, that makes tons of sense. And Karen, I bet that you have a lot of experience being a collaborator with banks. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit about how you think about your collaboration, and particularly in the past, let's call it 12 months, and I'm sure it will only accelerate. How have you seen sort of the dynamics change with the financial institutions you interact with, and helping them realize that some of the insights that you can provide through data are going to be super helpful for small businesses to grow, but also sort of reimagining how we do credit for small businesses going forward?
Sure. Well, there's definitely a pre and post 2020 approach to digitization and data. And the conversations we had at the start of 2020 were a lot about us justifying why we were actually doing something different than had already been done. So when we would approach banks, they felt that they were already digitized. But we already heard Nikhil said that if you look at digitization as a roadmap, we're about 5% of the way there. And I think he's being generous, to be honest. What we saw in March is the same banks that said they had digitized would confess to me privately that they were placing orders for laptops with Costco. And which means that business suppliers of laptops were no longer, they didn't have product. That is really what the state of affairs were. And I know so many banks who put so many hours and so much heart into identifying digitization strategy. It's a very high level word. And then to break it down into something where you can show an ROI and get the business units involved the way Ashley was speaking about, it is a lot of work to make happen in a regulated environment. And it's hard to explain it if you're not, and I'm on the outside of this, by the way. It's hard to explain what it really requires in order to get it done. Having said all that, and I'm a former banker, and I have lived through this, and I still can't believe it. We have been onboarded in 48 hours during COVID. 48 hours from, hello, tell me about your product, what can it do for me? We're going to put you through a security due diligence, which every bank would have to do before onboarding. We're going to identify the scope and the project, and we're going to onboard. And it's happened more than once. And if I stretch that timeline out to a week, it's happened more than a few times. It's just, I think the real change is the urgency. And with the urgency to create a solution, because we are all here because we really sincerely care about business. We understand that small and medium business is the backbone of the economy. With that need brings the urgency. Let's get all the decision makers into a room. Let's bring the fintech we're considering. Let's ask them real questions. Let's not be polite. Politeness went out the window in 2020. And let's just tell them what we need, get them to show us that it can work, and get started. I think that's the biggest thing I'm grateful for the banks that we've been lucky enough to partner with, because they're willing to do that. They're willing to give us the chance to show them that we can get results, and they're willing to tell us what they need in market. When you're launching product this quickly, there's always going to be feedback. And the fact that they have been so open with us, it's allowed us to grow and serve them better. Does that answer the question?
No, I think that is great. Maybe sort of flipping the coin to small business owners. How do you think that small business owners either should be pushing, or how should they think about what to ask for from their banks, or as they think about?
Did we lose Sarah?
May have.
Yeah.
Rapid fire. Who knows what small business owners want? I'll tell a story if it's helpful.
I asked a bank. Go ahead.
Yeah, I asked a bank once about foreign exchange, and they told me to go to a fintech. I know, Ashley, that you've experienced that as you've been, where you're asking small business owners what do they want. I know you did a lot of research this year into that, or the last year.
Yeah, and sometimes too, Karen, right? It's like we know as you're building your businesses. Sometimes it's not about what they want; it's about just digging in about how they feel, right? What's stressing them out? Like, what are the pain points? Not asking them like, oh, like what product would you design, but like, tell me about your daily challenges and tell me about, what's taking time and, where is that friction, and then zeroing in on those friction points and then building solutions that I think, you at Boston Sites and Nikhil at NARMI have done, right? You've sort of zeroed in on those friction points and you're trying to solve them with really cool technology.
Yeah, we kind of just, oh, sorry, go ahead, Karen.
I was just going to ask, what are you hearing, Nikhil, on the front lines?
Yeah, look, I think we're, there's a lot to talk about here, but we just think the business banking segment is super underserved right now. And it's hard, for sure. It's harder to make a business happy than a consumer. But there's just this really ripe opportunity when it comes to serving businesses better, helping them automate, making them be happy. PPP, you saw a lot of it. The banks that had strong business digital account opening, strong business mobile online banking they just gained a ton of customers. And I think that, like, hats off to them. They did it right. And I saw a question, really a question that caught my eye about the future of branches when it comes to given the increasing digitization of banking and the growing use of technology, growing use of technology to mediate banking relationships. What is the future of branches and small business banking? And look, I'm a little biased. I help run a company that's sole focus is to digitize banking and automate banking. But I genuinely believe there's a true path to automating a 99% of a SMB's need. But then maybe 99 is aggressive. Let's call it 95. But that 5% that requires that human interaction, that requires that phone call, requires that live chat, the bank or credit union just has that ability to just crush it right then and there and really go above and beyond. And the fact that they have been able to automate so much of it allows them to focus on that 5%. And I think this is not possible, again, like I said, for heavy commercial customers. But I truly believe you can. I think with a consumer, you can pretty much get 100% automated. In fact, consumers don't like calling their bank. That's not an enjoyable experience for them or a desired experience. But businesses just being complex, they might need that international wire sent overnight and don't know how to do that. You have the ability to wow there. So hopefully that's helpful. And Sarah, welcome back.
Yeah, apparently we're really good at technology. I don't know if that was me or the platform. It was probably user error, let's be honest. But thanks for continuing on without me. Just to sort of look ahead, Karen, and you spoke specifically about like the pre-2020 and the post-2020, and we've all sort of experienced the special times of this year. But what does it look like in 2025? I think we've made huge leaps forward in a very short period of time. But as you mentioned, small percentages of people are actually using digital banks. I think in sort of like the Stripe world, still only 13% of commerce is happening online, which is sort of blows your mind when everybody's ordering their food through digital apps and increasingly banking online. But what does it look like in 2025? Like where are we going, and what should we be striving for?
I think we're in a really shifting landscape where there was a time where it was just understood that you go to the bank for all of your financial products. And I think that going forward, the people who have the right to be the center of their customers' financial life will have to earn it by having the best and the latest in fintech, which means that their job just became infinitely more challenging. They're operating in a regulated environment, which I think we should all take our hats off to banks for doing. That is not nothing. And then they have to evaluate the best-in-class fintech out there. And we all know, let's call it a spade a spade. It is fintech Tinder. It's really hard to evaluate one from another, and everyone has the best-in-class this and the best in class that. And how are you supposed to, Ashley's nodding because probably she's had to evaluate so many. It's so challenging to know who's actually going to deliver what they say they're going to deliver, let alone tease apart their benefit statements from something that will really match all the incredible hours of work they're doing on customer-facing interviews. There are questions coming from the audience. What are examples that SMBs want? SMBs want access to foreign exchange and easy access to invoicing, and they want to stop having to enter in their payment information all the time. They want to stop having to fill in forms where they write their name all the time. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And the best fintechs will focus really well on one type of issue, and the banks are stitching it together. And the banks who make it possible with incredible innovation labs to stitch that best-in-class fintechs, they will do well. And we see news about the ones that are doing well, like the banks that were listed or who are appearing on the panel of this call, because they're just keeping the doors open to hear about what's best. And as the customers need that technology, they'll bring it in. But it's not their only choice. And the other big trend that I can see is that not all deposits are being actually kept in banks. This is something that is really underreported, but happening more and more because we have other options right now. You can have your deposits in a bank. You can also have them in a Square or Stripe account or any other deposits account. So if there is this big turning of the tides, say it respectfully like that, to see who has control of the flow of capital, I think the next 5 years are going to be really telling on who makes it the easiest for SMBs.
I love it. Fintech Tinder. What about you two? What do you think? Where are we going?
Nikhil, do you want to go first? So, I mean, I think, Karen's totally on point with her sentiments there of like where we're going. I would add to that. I think like hyper personalization, someone mentioned it in the chat as well, like really personalized services for small businesses, right? And Nikhil, you had mentioned, right, not all businesses or small businesses are in or are created equally in terms of industry. They have different needs, and being able to differentiate those offerings, per industry or per size of business, I think is going to be really, really important and something that's going to be table stakes, if we're thinking 5 years out. I think looking at the consumer space and seeing, how far we've come there, people just expect that type of experience, right? They expect that great user experience. They expect things to be automated and things that are, basically like, laid out for you. I don't think that's going to be any different for small business owners. They're going to expect the same type of service. And I also don't think that, high tech doesn't equate to like low touch in terms of like, it actually expands it, right? More technology will help you build more personal relationships with your customers. So it's not, I agree, Nikhil, like it will be more digital. No one's saying that the human is out of that experience, right? You're actually giving, those subject matter experts more opportunity to concentrate on more high value and more personal relationships with the customers. It's an enabler on a really, really great scale. We've seen that just even with video conferencing in the pandemic, right? Like everyone is just used to like, oh, you can jump on, your phone and see someone, you can jump on a video conferencing app, chatbot, things like that, just making it easier to communicate. So I think that personalization and the digitization is certainly on point for what we're going to see in the future. And it's a really, really exciting space to be in.
No, I think that's right. Sort of tying in a couple of questions that I'm seeing in the chat, and Nikhil, I'll throw it to you next. How should we be thinking about sort of financial literacy or ensuring that SMBs have the knowledge of the tools that are out there for them? I think, it's very easy for those of us that sort of sit close to, technology and innovation because of our business or because we're part of communities like Fintech Sandbox or Mass Challenge or others. But for the businesses that perhaps are not aware of the tools that are out there, what responsibility do your all's businesses have or others in this broader small business community have to ensuring that we're being inclusive with the financial tools that are out there?
Yeah, for sure. And I think this ties in well to the conversation we were just having with Ashley. But again, I come at it from a little different, unique angle where I'm going through the financial institution. But I do think it's up to look, at the end of the day, a business is going to have a bank account. I think that's a fairly strong assumption, or safe assumption, to make. Now, whether that bank account sits with a fintech or a bank, time will tell. I still believe it's the banks to lose. I don't think banks are going anywhere. So you have this business and they're in the bank. I do feel it's the financial institution's responsibility to further educate that business, to further help them meet their financial needs. This is where, and just to give you, a little, what we've done here, we created something called the App Exchange. So the App Exchange is basically a curation of fintech companies that go really, really deep in a certain functionality. And then our vision is to be that digital platform that the business goes into, but then they can engage with all these App Exchange members. And just to give some shout outs, like a really great Detroit-based company called Autobooks that, and this should answer another question I saw, but they just really help businesses with invoicing and getting paid faster and paying their vendors faster and cash flow. And it's the bank's job to marry like an Army and an Autobooks to make them seamless, so that when a business logs in, like, okay, here's my balance, here's how I send money to my payroll, here's how I pay bills, oh, here's how I do invoicing. And a lot of it's like user experience, Sarah. I mean, it's really, some of these platforms are very clunky on how they're architected. But I think that's really at least how we've approached it from our perspective, where we try to make it a seamless user experience. Because otherwise, like I've been kind of preaching today, I don't think an SMB wants a radically different experience than a consumer. I think they just want to be treated with respect. So respect means you recognize them in business. Thank you providing the invoicing functionality. You understand that getting paid faster is extremely important to me. And that's just the respect they're looking for. So, I would put the onus on the financial institution to really deliver that seamless experience. How they do it, there's a lot of ways to do it, but hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I think that makes lots of sense. And Karen, I think that you have done a good amount of work sort of working with financial institutions to provide data that maybe creates a more equal playing field. And I think that, especially as we look at minority communities and women-owned businesses who in a lot of ways have been hit hardest by the pandemic, how do you think about the work that you do with financial institutions to utilize technology to help level the playing field?
It's the thing I'm most proud of achieving, so thank you for asking me. And I'll try and answer some of the questions in the chat as I tell the story. So banks in general are full service institutions that you can go to for a checking account and a savings account. And then somebody asked, what is a fintech? A fintech could be defined as someone offering loans outside of it, so like financial technology company that's offering loans, or it could be a company that offers technology to banks, not including loans. We'd be in that category, or anything in between. It's really the new players that are not subject to the same regulations of the bank, but they're offering the new innovative technologies so that banks can then offer the best in class, and they're serving their customers in a full service way. Now, in the middle of PPP, round one, when we were really still figuring out what COVID was and what it was going to be, at that time where there were no cars on the road, where really people were in isolation, I was on a panel with a bunch of women. And there was a woman there who said to me, "You're a female-founded company. What exactly are you doing to support people who are on the sidelines, not getting supported by PPP?" Because the thing was about the first round of PPP, some large lenders and loans got approved at the beginning. There was a lot incredible about what happened. $800 billion in under a year given into market, but with legislation going out in 3 weeks, which is not the pace of the way it works in the government normally, there were some challenges. And the thing is, I was called out and I had nothing to say. I was offering the technology to any lender who would say yes to it, and I wasn't thinking about how I could support female-run businesses or visible minority-run businesses, which have been shown statistically to be disadvantaged when it comes to getting access to capital. In round two of PPP, the SBA created different rules, and they gave the banks that had charters supporting these types of businesses 1 week to apply for loans before everyone else. And while it's not a perfect solution, it did offer an opportunity. And because of a broker firm called PayBaby, who focuses in this area, introducing us to a bank called Carver Bank Corp in the tri-state area, we actually were able to put together a platform that could support businesses in this field. And it taught me a really valuable lesson. You can be in the middle of your day-to-day and you can be working on your own mission, which is to make sure that businesses are evaluated on their merit, to support the backbone of the economy. And you can also make use of what comes at you from the industry to focus on other impactful corporate social responsibility angles. And it doesn't matter how small you are. You can be a tiny company. If there's an opportunity out there where you can help other people, everybody will win. So that's why I say it's the thing I'm most proud of to date that we've achieved.
Oh, I can't.
I'm sorry.
I can't hear Sarah. Can anyone else hear her?
Mute again.
No.
User error here. I was going to say, Ashley, can you give us any experiences you have? You guys serve tons of SMBs and growing companies, that are incredibly diverse and have innovated for them. How do you think about it?
I mean, overall, I think you really have to come back to talking to those companies, right? Seeing what their unique needs are, because they are unique, and really diving into like, what are those specific pain points? What are those points of friction? And really diving into that and saying like, okay, how can we adjust our solutions accordingly? To me, a lot of it comes back to like, and again, I might sound repetitive or very simple, but like, you have to talk to your customers, right? You have to talk to your users, and you have to say, and reflect on that and synthesize that feedback and say, well, geez, we have this product, but it's not working for this segment of the population. Why is that? Right? Let's dive into it a little bit more. Let's try to figure out, where is there friction there? How could we adjust it? Or do we need another product? Or do we need more education there? How do we get this segment to take advantage of programs that we have that maybe we're not getting enough messaging out around? So to me, it all goes back to like, you really, really do need to talk to those users and figure it out. Because as Karen said, you can kind of be in the middle of stuff and just forget. So we really take a hard look at, going to those underserved populations and really making sure that we understand, how we can serve them best.
I think that's great. There was a great question in the chat about AI and having AI help serve, underserved communities. And I think that there's sort of this great debate of, does AI actually help or hurt? I wonder if you guys have thoughts around that, or how you're building things at your own companies to sort of accelerate the best parts of AI and mitigate for some of the worst. Anybody?
I just spoke, so I didn't want to speak. Does anybody want to go before?
Oh, go for it,
Karen.
Okay. The first talk I ever gave for Boss Insights was a few years ago, and it was about how AI is going to help us, not hurt us, if we do right by it. And the analogy I like to give about AI is 100 years ago, this was electricity. And sorry about that. I should put on my do not disturb. And everybody thought that electricity was dangerous, and it is in fact dangerous, but not for the reason that they thought. They thought it was going to come out of the walls and kill you. That thought is kind of laughable now, right? What it can do is it can kill you. If you put a hairdryer into a bathtub before the 80s, it would kill you, and then they solved around that. So AI, if we do not check it, yes, it can harm us. And there will be, everyone's talked about singularity and crazy things in the future. At the moment, where we are actually at is more inferred decision making. So you have data points, and then you have rules for the data points, and then you can decide on them based on those rules. And then you look back to see if your decisions were right or if you should change your thinking based on the data. That's kind of where we're at. We're at not even 5%. right? But what we can say about data right now is that it can really help with something that is a human condition. And I don't want to get crazy political here, but bias is something that afflicts everybody. If you look at a business on their merit before looking at them on things that will affect your decisioning, then you can give them a real decision. That's what we have to do when we're taking AI on. We have to start thinking about it. What do we want to see in a business so we can make a risk-appropriate decision on whether to take their deposits, on whether to give them capital, on whether to help them with whatever it is that they need? Then set those rules in place. And in that way, AI can help, because we've seen it do that. AI can create technology so that people who don't have vision can see through glasses. You can also create AI so that it creates a chat that within 24 hours, looking into what humans can put into it, can be quite racist. And so you just have to make sure that you set it. And both of those technologies, by the way, were created by the same company. So this is the way to show that if we set it up properly, it will work. And one thing is for certain. At the moment, we do have biased decisioning no matter how much we try. And that's really because we created systems and we're improving them as we go. So let's continue to improve them. Let's continue to be transparent about what we need from businesses in order to get them capital. Tell them up front. Don't just take their information and put it into somewhere. And then let's work on improving that decisioning to make it possible for them to get the capital. Now I feel like I just got on a soapbox. I apologize.
No, that's good. I'm going to sort of take what you said and throw it over to Nikhil and Ashley and twist it a little. I think a lot of what we want to do with new technologies, whether it's AI or what you all are building in your different spaces, is about trust with SMEs, building trust between institutions, that technology can actually work. So how should we think about building trust with technology in this period where there's going to be a proliferation of fintech that already started, but it is only going to accelerate in the coming years? Nikhil?
Yeah, for sure. I'd say dependability is like absolutely key here. And I joke because that's literally one of our 3 product pillars is dependability. But like nothing we've talked about today, whether that's seamless user experience, faster payments, better X, AI, like none of it matters if it doesn't work, if it's not dependable. Again, I kind of go back to what I've been saying today, like you need to treat these businesses with respect. Something goes down for a consumer, like one, it definitely is not acceptable, but like, it's okay. Like, it's okay. It can be okay most of the times, but for businesses, well, their customers get impacted. People don't get paid. They miss rent. Like it's just this whole downstream effect, far more complicated, far more entangled. So I would just, it's a pretty short answer for me. I would just say like really just focusing on dependability, making sure stuff works, making sure you've really, dotted the I's and crossed the T's would be kind of my main thing to focus on.
Great. Ashley?
Yeah, I mean, I would add to that. I would say, the people factor is really important. You want to have, whether you're working in a fintech or a bank, you want to have trusted people, right, that are in charge of these systems, that are looking after these systems, that are building these systems. You want to test, right? You want to have controls. You want to see the outcomes. You want to base decisions based on data, right, that you're seeing. You don't want to just sort of let it fly, right, and have no accountability, because that becomes your brand, right? In the people building it and the people behind the scenes that are serving the customers really do care about the outcomes of these. If we're talking about small businesses, you care about your consumers, you care about your small business customers, right? You care that you're making an impact on their lives, and if your tech doesn't work or your services don't work, that's a big issue. Or if you have bias in those systems, if we go back to like the AI. So I think it's really important that if you're going to use some of these newer technologies, you're sort of testing them, and Karen brought this up, right? Like seeing what the outcomes are, really digging in. What does that really mean? What are the impacts? And going back and adjusting, and making sure that you have some good, third parties or, controls in place to, kind of check yourself. You don't want to do these things in a vacuum. You want to have the community behind you of, okay, like, yeah, we've tested it, we've looked into it. This is what the outcomes are. This is what the data is telling us. We feel good about it, right?
Great. Well, I know we are running out of time, and so I'm actually going to steal a question from the chat as the final question that I will ask to each of you. Can you say one thing that you think Fintechs should be doing for small businesses going forward, and one thing that small businesses should be doing to take advantage of Fintech? Rapid fire. Somebody can go first, whoever thinks of their answer first.
I saw the question by Sarah Biller. Thank you for everything you're doing in the community, Sarah. Going on what was discussed this morning with payments, the biggest issue with payments, aside from the manual nature, is that people don't often know that they have the revenue coming in, and then the money coming in is a completely separate event from the payment going out. What we've started to do is partner with some of the data providers that are controlling the capital coming in, all the commerce providers, because they have the key to getting the payments to go out faster. And if we can tie that event, a lot of those payments are regular. So there's no reason you have to issue it as a unique event. And I know that gets right into the weeds, but imagine you have dollars coming in, you could hit a button because you've already set up that payment processor. You don't have to put in all the details. So stay tuned.
I love when we talk about payment processing. Nikhil?
Yeah, and can you just repeat it one more time, Sarah?
Yeah. One thing that you think that Fintech should be doing for SMBs, and one thing that SMBs should be taking advantage of from Fintechs.
Got it. Well, my immediate answer for the second was definitely payments. And there's a $100 billion company out there that is centered around this. So I'll just defer to you on that. But I think SMBs can really, one thing they're just not taking advantage of is probably the more digital oriented solutions. I do think, which is kind of contrary to everything I've said today, but I do think SMBs still operate very much in a human branch heavy way. I think that's a very real thing for most regional and community banks. There's a reason why that was a major issue during COVID and still is. So I'd say on the SMB side, I would love to see them really embracing digital. And to be honest, I saw this over the past 10 years with Square and the actual payment consoles. Before, you used to see these legacy companies like NCR and these, I don't even know who they are, but these ugly terminals that would sit there. And now you're seeing these iPads. And I saw a massive shift on SMBs towards that. But I don't think that's really gone and infiltrated the whole experience. And on the Fintech to SMB side, I would say focus on automation, focus on making their life easier would be the same thing you apply to a consumer-oriented product. I would try to apply that same level of simplicity and delightful experience to a business product. And I think because of that, you'll see success. So those are my two answers.
Great. Ashley, you're on the hot seat next.
I'm on the hot seat. Oh gosh. So I would say for Fintechs, again, making their lives easier, and how can you help them analyze their data better, right? AI, having data scientists, right? Probably not on an SMB's payroll. So how can you bring that sort of technical knowledge to them? I think would be really good. How can you help them see trends in their own business, automation, all good stuff. And then I think, Nikhil, you had a really good point, right, around taking advantage for SMBs to take advantage of digital services that are already out there. Call up your banker, right? Check out their website, right? Just go in and say, what mobile services may be available that I just maybe am afraid to take advantage of or I don't know about. I think that can go a long way. And if those groups have, user groups, join those user groups so you can give real-time feedback.
Well, I think that's great. I know that we are out of time, which pains me because it's been so fun to talk to all of you. And thanks for everyone in the audience for such great questions. I know we didn't get to all of them, but I think just in wrapping, I look ahead and I think wow, the playing field is going to be so much better for small businesses that take advantage of fintech companies that are really trying to innovate, and banks that are working with fintechs that are innovating. And when you have the same tools that a huge multinational corporation is using, or the ease of tools that they're using, you really can have the ability to scale your business, even if it is, a small Main Street business or something that you're tinkering on in your garage or out of your home office. You have the ability to have a much bigger impact on your own economics and your community. So thank you all for your time. Thank you again to Fintech Sandbox for having us today, and looking forward to seeing you all hopefully in person sometime soon.